Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Brave.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question. That's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and want to have an open discussion.
My name is Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Hello, well, good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on Sunday, the 8th of February, and this is the weekend on GB News. Your main stories this hour. Lord Mandelson walked away with a taxpayer-funded payoff worth tens of thousands after being sacked as ambassador, with the Home Office now launching a review into how the payment was signed off. And it really isn't looking good for the Prime Minister. Labour MPs are urging Sir Keir Starmer to step aside for a caretaker leader until the summer, amid growing fears the party faces disaster at the ballot box if he stays. And a veteran counter-extremism advisor has accused the Home Office of trying to silence him after he spoke about the Islamist threat, claiming he faced pressure to fall in line or step aside. Meanwhile, the Welsh Government has spent 1.2 million of your money on a virtual reality anti-racist world, teaching students about white privilege, amongst other things. Is this a waste of money or much-needed education? And Brits are increasingly saying "I do" later in life, with pensioners now more likely to marry than people in their 20s. Just why are young people shunning marriage? I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. Well, I have to say that was a really lovely start to the afternoon for me, because I got to sit on the sofa and have a chat with the wonderful Emily Carver, who did a brilliant job standing in for Michael Portillo this morning. If you missed it, you're going to have to catch up on YouTube or however you do it. But she was wonderful, and I got to play with baby George outside in the room, who is the cutest baby. It has to be. It's really lovely. So it's really good to see Emily back, and she did a sterling job. OK, now this show is all about you and your views, as I always say, so please get your comments coming in about whatever we're talking about today. And I have to say, we've got a great show coming up for you, because we are talking about an element of the Epstein files that nobody's really gone into at the moment. I did a deep dive into the files overnight, and I really would not advise it. It is eyeball-searingly awful. But there's a very important story buried in there that no one's touched on yet, so I'm going to do that. You really don't want to miss it. You know, especially if you're a woman or a girl, it's very important, but also if you're a man, and there's lots and lots of good men out there, I know, who care about the safety of women and girls in this country and abroad. So do stay with me for that one, because I really want to talk to you about what's going on with that. OK, let's get in touch. In case, gbnews.com/yoursay, scan the QR code. And in case, we've got a really, really packed couple of hours for you, but first, let's get Katie Bowen with your news headlines.
Dawn, thank you and good afternoon. The headlines at 1:02. Lord Mandelson is facing calls to hand back the payoff he received after he was sacked as ambassador to the United States. The Foreign Office is reviewing the sum, which could be worth tens of thousands of pounds. The former Labour peer lost his role in September over his relationship with paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. The Prime Minister's allies have said he should give the taxpayer-funded handout back or donate it to a victims' charity. Shadow Foreign Secretary Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel has described the payoff as a disgusting betrayal of Epstein's victims and questions Sir Keir Starmer's judgment. It comes as the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, says he warned Sir Keir Starmer against hiring Lord Mandelson. He has not been arrested, and he also denies any wrongdoing. Work and Pension Secretary Pat McFadden has defended the Prime Minister.
I think the Prime Minister's acted in good faith throughout. I think Peter Mandelson has put him in a very bad position. When more information came to light last September, he very quickly fired Peter Mandelson. He's horrified by the revelations of the past week. He's apologised to the victims of this, and rightly so. So I think, you know, we will see more when all these vetting documents are published, as I hope they are very soon.
But Alex Burkhardt says the Prime Minister should be embarrassed.
It's been Kemi's questioning in September that led to Mandelson being fired. It was her questioning on Wednesday that led to everyone finding out for the first time exactly what the Prime Minister had known about Mandelson's ongoing relationship with Epstein. It has been Conservative opposition that has pushed this every single step of the way, and has led to the Prime Minister being more deeply embarrassed by a political scandal than anyone can really remember in living memory.
Elsewhere today, police in Italy have fired tear gas and water cannons at protesters near the Winter Olympics venue. Wearing hoods and scarves threw firecrackers, smoke bombs and bottles at the officers. It appears they broke away from the main demonstration, which saw around 10,000 take to the streets in Milan to protest against the environmental and economic impact of the Games. Similar disruption was caused half a mile from the Olympic Village, where 1,500 athletes are staying. An American news presenter whose mother went missing from her home 8 days ago has told the people who kidnapped her she will pay their ransom demands. Police believe Savannah Guthrie's 84-year-old mother, Nancy, was abducted from her home in Arizona, but have not identified any suspects. Earlier this week, the FBI offered a $50,000 reward for information. According to reports, the kidnappers are demanding millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency.
We received your message, and we understand. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
Those are your latest GB News headlines. Now let's get back to Dawn.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player, and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you very much, Katie. And hello, everybody. Hello to Margaret and Lucy and Tilly and Robert and everybody else getting in touch. Please do keep the... Yes, and even you, Norman. I'll say hello to you as well. Please do keep those messages coming in. And, yes, I will read as many out as I possibly can. Robert, especially yours. Keep them coming in, though. GBNews.com/yoursay. OK, now, the big story of the day, the week, the hour, God knows how long it's going to go on for. Keep checking your watches, though. Will we still have the same Prime Minister come the end of this show? Who knows? Anyways, the latest thread to this one is the Foreign Office is reviewing a payment made to Lord Mandelson after he was sacked as US Ambassador back in September. Peter Mandelson is thought to have received a 5-figure lump sum that was equivalent of 3 months' pay, despite only being in the role for 7 months. Estimates put it around about £50,000. Could be a bit more, could be a bit less, we're not sure. In any case, meanwhile, Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy has become the first Cabinet Minister to break ranks with Sir Keir Starmer after his allies told journalists he warned the Prime Minister about Mandelson. Earlier this morning on GB News, Pat McFadden defended Sir Keir Starmer's decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as the US Ambassador. Have a listen to what he said.
I think the Prime Minister's acted in good faith throughout. I think Peter Mandelson has put him in a very bad position. When more information came to light last September, he very quickly fired Peter Mandelson. He's horrified by the revelations of the past week. He's apologised to the victims of this, and rightly so. So I think, you know, we will see more when all these vetting documents are published, as I hope they are very soon.
Well, the one part of that I would agree with is we get to see all these documents soon, because what you don't want is all of this being brushed under the carpet, kicked into the long grass, all those metaphors apply, and none of us having any answers to really important questions about the men, and let's be honest, they're all men we're talking about this, supposedly running the country. At the moment, who is even running the country? We've got the Prime Minister running around like a headless chicken. We've got his deputy saying, well, I warned him all about it, not at all angling for his job at all in any way, shape or form. Let's try and get to the bottom of what's going on by talking to political editor at The Independent, David Maddox. David, your head must be in a spin after the week we've had, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. Lots of people angry about this payment made to Peter Mandelson. What taxpayers' money? I mean, should we start with that one first?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be on your show, Dawn. It's just astonishing. You know, just when you think that it can't get worse, it absolutely does. I mean, whoever thought it was a good idea to give him a 5-figure payout, the sort of thing that, you know, most people would need to win the lottery for in this country to actually get in a year, is astonishing. You know, given this man was sacked, and we knew that more revelations were coming out at that point. In fact, we now know from last week that the Prime Minister knew about the ongoing relationship between Mandelson and Epstein, and still they thought, you know, let's give him a good wad of taxpayers' money. I'm afraid it's just dreadful, and you know, I know you're probably going to ask, but I'm struggling to see how the Prime Minister survives.
I think everybody is struggling to see how the Prime Minister survives. It's very interesting. David Lammy coming out today on the front page of, indeed, The Telegraph, saying, Lammy, I warned Starmer all about Mandelson. This would be the same David Lammy that was doing the press rounds when Mandelson got the job as ambassador, saying, no, he's a great man, best man for the job. He's got all the necessary skills and talents to do it. I mean, at the very least, it's hypocrisy. At worst, there's lots of words that I can't say live on air.
I mean, in David Lammy's defence, I have to say, he was bound then by collective responsibility. He did actually, as then Foreign Secretary, have a job to stand up for the appointment, whether he agreed with it privately or not. I think if he did advise the Prime Minister, and obviously I wasn't in the room, but when he had those conversations, but if he did advise the Prime Minister and it has so badly gone wrong, he's now got every right to say, well, actually, I did warn him against this. And I'm sure he was having similar conversations to the ones I was having in the week before Trump's inauguration, where all these issues, China and Epstein in particular, were being raised in Washington, D.C. The Trump administration did not want Mandelson there. And, you know, they insisted on pushing ahead with it. And I'm pretty sure that Lammy picked up that message loud and clear.
Well, I mean, to be fair to David Lammy, he is quite good friends with J.D. Vance. So, I mean, he would have been actually in on what the feeling was about Mandelson and talking about what the Americans actually wanted, not that it should be their job to make this appointment, obviously. But the former ambassador, Dame Karen Pierce, she wanted to stay. She was known as a Trump whisperer. She was doing a brilliant job. Lord Glassman, a Labour grandee, he was saying, look, hold on a minute, Mandelson's not right. Let's keep Karen Pierce in the job. Why on earth did they put Mandelson in this job? I keep coming back to that basic bottom question. What were they thinking Mandelson would do?
Well, I just find it astonishing. And I have to say, when I see ministers, cabinet ministers and Starmer saying, well, the media said it was a great idea. Personally speaking, I was writing about what a dreadful idea it was at the time. And I know a few of my colleagues were as well. I was having conversations with people about to enter that Trump administration back in January last year. And, you know, it was very clear then that they didn't want him. They could have actually rejected his credentials and only didn't do so because Trump didn't want to embarrass the king. And,
yeah, of course.
You know, I mean, I look at this, you know, I looked at the shows this morning. I saw Camilla's show. It's great show on GB News, you know, and I see them wheeling out Pat McFadden. I think, how cloth-eared of the government. They've sent out Pat McFadden because, you know, he's the ultimate kind of safe pair of hands that can normally kill a news story and deal with it. But this is a man who is part of a boys' club that Labour women this morning have been complaining about. He's close to McSweeney, saying that McSweeney, the Chief of Staff who pushed for this dreadful appointment, shouldn't be fired. Well, of course he would say that. I'm reminded of the words of Mandy Rice Davis from the great Profumo scandal, the first of these kinds of scandals, when she said, well, he would say that, wouldn't he? You know, and, you know, it's like, you know, saying that he had no idea about Mandelson. We know that McFadden was a close ally, worked very closely with Mandelson. This is the worst person to send out, and it kind of shows you the lack of political nous in this government and why I'm afraid it is, well, I mean, it's already on the rocks. I'm just saying, I mean, I can't say it's heading towards the rocks. It is already on the rocks.
It's on the rocks. It's just how long it takes to go down. I mean, this is the thing, right? You can ignore all the newspapers that have been covering this story from the Financial Times, you know, a good few years back. You can ignore the TV programme. There's an entire documentary about Mandelson, Epstein, etc., etc. You can ignore the dossier that your own civil servants gave you about Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But MI6, the security service, OK, you're the Prime Minister, the security service warned that Epstein and Mandelson were an issue 15 years ago. They were a security threat 15 years ago. Is the Prime Minister not even talking to his own security services?
Well, I think he was. I mean, I did a story a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, actually saying exactly that Mandelson had failed the security vetting in this whole process and the appointment. MI6 had raised red flags about it. This is a man who was sacked, well, forced to resign, I should say, twice, but effectively sacked for inappropriate behaviour, and especially around money. I mean, why, you know, he has behaved in what many would regard as a corrupt manner publicly before all this happened. And I think Peter Kyle let the cat out of the bag in one of the interviews he did last year around the appointment, you know, saying it was worth the risk and that they knew about these issues, but it was worth the risk. And I think there are a great deal of people in Downing Street and in this government now who are reflecting on the fact that it was not anywhere near worth the risk. And
no,
it really shame on them and the rest of us.
Absolutely, and that's the exact word, David. It's shame, absolutely shame. The one thing I think Mandelson can do to regain a little bit of, well, not sympathy, I don't even know what the word is, a little bit of sort of something back from the public, that potential £55,000 he got for being sacked, he could donate that to the victims of grooming gangs in this country. At least something good can come out of it then.
But, you know, actually, I'm glad you mentioned grooming gangs there, because I think this is one part of a wider issue. The reason Mandelson was appointed, the reason that they ignored all the stuff was that they didn't care about the victims. They're now sort of saying, well, you need to remember the victims. They didn't care about the victims. And we saw exactly the same with the grooming gang issue. They didn't care about these white working class girls who were victims of the most appalling sexual abuse and rape. Let's be frank about it. And they didn't want to have an inquiry into it. It was Labour councils mostly who didn't care. There's all this virtue signalling about women's rights and all the rest of it. And there's some very good, particularly women politicians in Labour who do push these things. But when it comes down to it, when it really kind of, the rubber hits the road, they don't care. And they only care when it blows up in their face.
Yeah, as it has now, deservedly so. David, thank you very much for joining us today. Political editor of The Independent, David Maddox there with some strong words. Well, let me know what you think about this. I mean, I'm just still so angry. And as David rightly pointed out there are victims. It doesn't matter whether it's a private jet to a private island or a dodgy minicab to a grim bedsitter by the kebab shop. Women and girls are the victims here, and that's the important thing. And that's why all of the men involved in this, whether they're rape gangs in Rotherham or very, very rich men in the Caribbean, they all have questions to answer and we all need to hold them to account. OK, joining me now in the case is political commentator Sebastian Salek to digest from the left point of view. I mean, you're a Labour councillor, aren't you, Sebastian? What the latest threads in this story? Shall we start with David Lammy saying he warned Starmer about Mandelson. He may have done, but he also seemed to support the decision to give him the job.
Yeah, look, I think David was right, David Maddox, your previous guest, in that he does have collective responsibility, and it's unsurprising now that he is going to come out and start to give away a little bit of what might have happened behind the scenes, because it was a very high-profile appointment and there were a lot of disagreements around who it should have been. I mean, there was reporting in the New Statesman earlier this week that that Starmer was favouring George Osborne for the position for a long time. They knew they needed a politician to take on Trump, but a lot of disagreement over who exactly that might have been.
Well, bizarrely, and this was something I just learnt this morning doing some digging around in this one, one of the other options was old Etonian, former SAS soldier, who became chief scout, Bear Grylls.
That's news to me, that one. Sorry, I can't say much more than that.
Well, absolutely quiet. I mean, where did that come from? But, I mean, obviously we had a very good British ambassador in Western, Dame Karen Pierce. She was known as the Trump whisperer. She was doing a very, very good job. So why did Keir Starmer, because the buck stops with him, he's the boss at the end of the day. You can talk about Morgan McSweeney, Freudian slip, McSweeney, you can talk about whoever else you like, but he is the one that gave Mandelson the job. And you keep coming back to why we had a very good ambassador there in the first place. What was it about Mandelson?
Well, as the reporting goes, because neither you or I were in that room, they wanted somebody who was a politician because they needed somebody who could take on Trump, who is a different kind of president, shall we say, to put it incredibly lightly. He's a man who doesn't respond well to normal ambassadorial techniques, and that kind of makes sense to me, that you'd want somebody who understands politics, who understands the incentives and the wishes of the rich and the powerful, and so it was landed on quite early that it should be some form of politician rather than a traditional ambassador. And I think that's why Karen Pierce was then set aside, and the
incoming Trump admission said, we like Karen, we want Karen to stay, she's doing a good job. She was nicknamed the Trump whisperer. She was clearly making inroads.
Sure, and look, I'm not here to defend decisions that I wasn't part of, but we know that that the US shouldn't decide who the ambassador should be.
Well, absolutely,
of
course.
Accounts, and we have to be careful here. And look, I really don't want to defend Mandelson because what he's done is horrible, but we have to be careful not to revise the general opinion at the time that he did a decent job in his role. It just so happened that he disgraced himself in all sorts of other ways.
Right, OK, and to be fair, that is a point. In the role that he was given, he didn't do anything wrong. He was wrong before he got the job, but he didn't do anything wrong. So that brings us to the payout he's been given, £55,000, we think, for being removed from that job, for being sacked. Do you think it would help, Sebastian, if he gave that money and donated that money to the victims of grooming gangs in this country?
Yeah, look, I think he should either give that money back to the taxpayer or make a donation to whatever charity might be appropriate. Those are the two options that seem fair to me. He certainly shouldn't be keeping that money. It seems just to be a quirk of the system that you have to give a payout to somebody who's sacked, and maybe we need to have a look at that as well and see whether that's appropriate going forward, because these things will always happen again. So maybe it's an opportunity to look at that. But certainly in this instance, yeah, it's not fair for Mandelson to keep that money afterwards.
Sebastian, quickly, and finally, the last time we spoke, you were still valiantly defending Keir Starmer. Are you still feeling that way?
It all depends what's in those disclosures, and I really, really hope we get them soon, because it's hanging over him like such a cloud, isn't it? And look, if it turns out that he's lied to us all, then of course it's going to be very difficult for him to cling on. But if it does appear that he was honest and he was operating only on the information that he knew and has been clear about, then maybe there is a route out for him. So it really, really hinges on that. And yeah, as I say, I hope we get that as soon as possible so we can all know
Sebastian,
the truth.
it does appear that he ignored the warning of his own security service, MI6.
So that story was a warning about Mandelson's links to Oleg Deripaska, who was a Russian oligarch.
But still,
and as far as I know, there's been
still about how potentially a risk Mandelson was to national security.
Yeah, and that risk, that information was given back in the noughties when he was an EU commissioner.
15 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So look, it's worth taking into account, but as far as I know, there was no allegation that there's any wrongdoing with the Russians here. It's purely Epstein and all of those horrible situations that have played out.
OK, Sebastian, thank you very much for joining us. Political commentator and Labour councillor Sebastian Sallet there. Thank you very much for joining us. OK, a Downing Street spokesperson who told GB News we have already strengthened the ministerial code, giving the independent advisor greater powers to launch investigations, introduce a new monthly register of gifts and hospitality, establish a new ethics commission and ensure that ministers who break the rules cannot receive severance payments. OK, and we have some breaking news now for you as well. GB News can reveal hundreds of small boat migrants have across the Channel today taking advantage of improved conditions at sea. The latest arrivals push this year's total to nearly 1,200. We, of course, bring you updates on that story as and when we get it throughout the show, so stay with us. OK, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. A former government advisor says he was pressured to stay quiet about the Islamist threat, raising serious questions about priorities inside the Home Office. We'll speak to Fayo Mugu himself next. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. I'll see you very soon.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for your company. Now, a senior figure in Britain's fight against extremism is breaking ranks after stepping down from his government advisory role. Fayez Mughal says he faced pressure to tone down his public warnings about Islamist ideology, raising difficult questions about priorities, politics, and whether officials are willing to confront the threat head-on. Remember, this affects all of us. It really does. So I'm pleased to say that Fayez joins us now. Fayez, thank you so much for joining me. Really good to speak to you today. This is a piece in the Telegraph to say the headline says Home Office tried to silence advisor who raised concerns about Islamism. Now, you've always been the voice of reason in this area. Just tell us a little bit about what happened.
Well, actually, there's two stages to this, and it came after what was then what was called the Prevent Sprint, or the Counter-Extremism Sprint Review, and that took place as the Labour government was coming into it was happening during the time the election was taking place, just a few months before that, and it was pretty clear from the review that was taking place by civil servants that when they presented that in a two-day event, Islamism and Islamist extremism was not really framed as the main issue affecting us around extremism and counterterrorism work. There was lots of talk about mixed ideology, gender-based extremism. There was a lot of talk about, a range of extremist views that may cloud into action. But I raised repeatedly the point that where is Islamist extremism in the strategy? And I raised that 2 or 3 times. It was pretty clear civil servants didn't want to hear my objections. And that was effectively, I felt civil servants were trying to tone down to some degree that element because they perceived that the Labour government really didn't want to kind of pick up these core issues early on. That was what I perceived. And then I had, after writing for the Telegraph, a while back, I had a text message from a senior Home Office official who basically said, "Oh, in effect, let me have a chat with you because I felt I felt pressurized, but he wanted to kind of put his view and opinion across." And that was a very subtle, insidious way of pressurizing me, I felt. I even said that to him. And in a way, there were suggestions there that, we need to kind of manage you. There was a very subtle suggestion there. Now, I'm not the kind of guy to get those kind of threats, right? I don't put up with threats, particularly when Islamist extremism has killed so many people in our country. And when I, as a Muslim, having worked 20 years with Muslim community, know that Islamist extremism is a threat within some small sections of the community. But the fact is that after Gaza, it has grown. I mean, and the fact also that ministers, literally getting them to even say the word Islamist extremism is like a bulldog chewing a wasp. It's so difficult to get them to talk about this issue publicly. And so we're in a position where you can see that people who promote the view that community cohesion is the overriding factor in society have driven that home within this Labour government. And I believe that community cohesion is an overriding factor, which also tempers the way they talk about Islamist extremism and tempers the way they talk about something which is deadly, absolutely deadly to all of us in our society. And I think it's a national security issue that they need to keep addressing and publicly.
Of course, I mean, as you say, Fayez, so eloquently, it is a threat to all of us. You think, right. I mean, you were brought in after the 7/7 London bombings, the Manchester Arena attack. I mean, little girls were killed.
That's right. That's right. and you think about the damage to mental health on the back of victims, you think about the damage economically to local communities, you think about the damage to our society. If we don't talk about Islamist extremism, it damages social cohesion, our community relations, it damages our security of our nation. And if Labour continue to listen to the snakeskin oil salesman going in and out of Downing Street, telling them that, oh my God, if you talk about this, it's really going to affect social cohesion, as if the British public don't have the sense to differentiate between, not targeting one community, but targeting extremism. I mean, this Labour government is in effect thinking we're pretty stupid because we want to, don't talk about Islamist extremism because it might inflame tension. No, the fact which is inflaming tension is the fact of Islamist extremism, which is the overriding extremism that is a threat to all of us in the British public.
Fires, I could talk to you for a long time, but we are running out of time with you. What is the government so scared of? Why are they so frightened of talking about this issue? Are they frightened of losing votes amongst the Muslim population?
It is both. It is partly they don't want to lose a political base, and it's partly about those so-called advisors which are advising them not to talk about this issue because it may affect Muslims. Again, assuming that the British public can't differentiate between not targeting somebody, but actually talking about and addressing the elephant in the room. They think we're stupid. Frankly, we have to address the elephant in the room if we are to also create better relations going forward. And so those advisors going in and Downing Street actually are part of the issue.
Fires, I think they are idiots not talking to you. I mean, you've got so much that you could help them with and so much that you could help the rest of us with. Just one final quick question. Do you get the impression that this government and other governments before them are putting politics before people?
Totally. I talk to people up and down the country. They are frightened about the impact on our society, the change in the country. They are worried about safety and security. And we have politicians of all ilk who talk about their political Westminster-style sense of politics, but are missing the basic needs of safety, security, income, and of valuing the sense of our country and what it stands for.
Fires, well, I do hope they start listening to you soon. I certainly hope they watch this. We'll maybe send them the clip. Thank you very much for joining us today. That's Fire Mughal there, who is was advising the government about the Islamist threat and now is being ignored. Fires, thank you so much for joining us today. OK, a Home Office spokesperson has said the government regularly works with external partners and experts to discuss policy ideas, as broad consultation is an important part of responsible policy development. The UK has one of the most robust counter-terrorism frameworks in the world, with the powers needed for the security services and police to keep us safe. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GBNews. There's lots more coming up on today's show, but first, it's the news headlines.
Good afternoon. The headlines at 1:34. The Foreign Office is reviewing a payment worth tens of thousands of pounds given to Lord Mandelson after he was sacked as US ambassador to the US over his links to Jeffrey Epstein. Police in Italy have fired tear gas and water cannons at protesters near the Winter Olympics venue after they launched firecrackers, smoke bombs and bottles at officers. It appears they broke away from the main demonstration, which saw around 10,000 take to the streets in Milan to protest against the environmental and economic impact of the Games. Hundreds of small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel today, taking advantage of an improvement to weather conditions. The first group of around 65 migrants were taken to Ramsgate just before 1 o'clock this afternoon. And voters in Japan have been braving 28 inches of snow to cast their ballot in a snap election called just 2 weeks ago. Japan's first female Prime Minister is looking to have secured a clear mandate for the Liberal Democratic Party, which has ruled the country for most of the last 70 years. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thank you for your company. Lots of you getting in touch about our interview with Fayez just then. Lots of you saying what a brave man for speaking out. Yeah, and I know Fayez has had personal threats against him as well for doing exactly that. OK. But we have got an amazing story coming up. It's have women ever been truly safe in industries dominated by powerful men? After the Epstein scandal, we are asking, has anything really changed? And more importantly, will it? You don't want to miss it. It's a very powerful story for you. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GBNews, Britain's news channel. I'll see you very soon.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's a dry start for some of us out there the first thing today, but we are going to see further heavy showers spreading their way northeastwards through the course of Sunday, but temperatures will be on the mild side for February. The showers will mostly focus themselves along this weather front as we go through the course of this afternoon, but low pressure does dominate through much of the coming week. So maybe a dry start to this afternoon across some eastern parts of England, but there's still some patchy mist and fog to clear in the odd place. Otherwise, we've got these bands of showers and longer spells of rain pushing their way in from the west. Perhaps the odd rumble of thunder and a little bit of hail mixed in the southwest as well. But temperatures around or slightly above average for the time of year, highs in double figures for many of us, and relatively light winds for the vast majority. But that's not the case across the northeast of Scotland, where once again we are going to see those really strong southeasterly winds, particularly for Orkney and Shetland. So as well as it being wet and rather cold, it's going to be pretty windy as well out there this afternoon and into this evening. Showers or longer spells of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, other parts of Scotland and across many parts of England and Wales through the course of this evening, but maybe one or two clearer breaks coming through, particularly later this evening. As we go through the course of tonight, those showers will continue to migrate their way northwards and eastwards across the UK. Some dry and clear interludes following to some western areas as we go into the early hours. And where we do see skies clear for any length of time, there is the potential for one or two isolated mist and fog patches tonight. But for most, it's a frost-free night, temperatures holding up at 6 or 7 degrees for most of us, and a relatively mild start to Monday. Once again, though, a lot of cloud in the sky on Monday, though I am hopeful it will turn a little bit brighter for the Midlands, parts of eastern England and the southeast through the morning and into the afternoon. But here comes that next band of rain. Heavy rain pushing into the southwest, South Wales, and that rain falling on saturated ground. So we could well see some flooding by the end of the day. Temperatures around average or above for the time of year.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Okay, now we're talking about, I've been doing a lot, like a lot of journalists, I've been doing a lot of deep diving into the Epstein files, and I really wouldn't advise, because the stuff you're reading in your papers is nothing to some of the stuff that's actually in the files. In particular, pertaining to the victims, who we're all talking about the politics, we're getting very angry about Mandelson, etc., etc. But we forget that there are victims involved in this. And one thing I read overnight, which truly shocked me, was how Epstein, when he first came out of jail the first time, was sent 4 12-year-old girls to help him celebrate. I know nothing more than that. The girls, like many of the victims in this, are completely nameless. Their names are forgotten. Their traumas will probably stay with them for the rest of their lives. So we are now talking about the abuse of women and girls, and you've got two extremes going on at the moment, haven't you? You've got the whole hideousness of the Epstein saga, where rich men with private jets and private islands abusing very young girls, and you've got the rape gangs, where you have got very young girls being abused, you know, ferried about in dodgy minicabs to dodgy flats above dodgy kebab shops. There is no difference in my world. These are horrific men doing horrific things to women and girls. And until we actually start tackling what's going on here, it's going to carry on. We know that the rape gangs are continuing, still continuing. It's just awful. In any case, I was prompted to talk about this by one of the things I learned from the folders about a top model, a very top model back in the 90s. And she was talking back then about the model industry, and Epstein had links to, that's all in the files as well. Epstein had links to model agencies, and many model agencies were used to ferry girls, young girls, to Epstein and the island in particular. This model was speaking out about that, and she lost her career because she was talking about it. Well, you can read for yourself what she said, but basically she was treated appallingly, and she was treated appallingly over 20 years ago, not because she did anything wrong, because she spoke out earlier than most other people did. So we're asking now, based on that testimony, have women ever truly been safe in any industry? And let's face it, most of them dominated by rich, powerful, influential men. It doesn't matter if this is showbiz. We've had #MeToo, haven't we? The modelling industry, absolutely rife for it, as this story exposed. The Epstein case has blown the whole thing over, from modelling industry, showbiz, politics, you name it. There are rich, powerful men involved in this, and girls and women are the victims. So I want to talk in particular about the modelling industry today and some of the girls that were abused in that one. And I thought, who better to talk about what it's really like at the sharp end of this, the young, beautiful women, beauties, let's call them beauties, who are used and abused by men in the industry. Let's call them the beast, shall we? See what I did there? So let's talk to broadcaster and columnist and former model Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, the Epstein files are horrific. This particular model's testimony is even more horrific. You've been there. What's it really like? You started when you were very young in modelling. What is it like for young, beautiful girls in this industry?
Well, firstly, Dawn, can I say my hearts and thoughts are with all the victims, and I'm not surprised to see and read this in the Epstein files. Yeah, I started modelling very young, Dawn. I was 14 years old, and I've seen it all in the modelling world. I was with 2 leading worldwide model agencies, and both of those agencies would ask for certain girls to go to the parties of very wealthy, very powerful men, some very well known and, you know, that are worldwide names, who would ask for girls and for sometimes men, young boys, to go to parties, to go to dinners. And, you know, it was kind of like the agents were pimping the models out. And, you know, you were offered great money. You think, oh, this sounds glamorous, going to be fun, but sadly got a very, very dark side to it, Dawn.
And do you have any personal experience of people involved in the modelling industry making suggestions to you?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I was asked to go to these parties. Thankfully, my father worked in the business, was very strict, and, you know, refused me to go. He knew what was going on. But sadly, many of my friends went down a very dark route and got, you know, involved with drugs, alcohol abuse, and these men seriously abused them. And I've got friends that are still suffering from, you know, the trauma of that today, Dawn. And I think we've really got to open our eyes to the modelling world. Yes, it can be glamorous. You can travel the world like I did. It can be fantastic. But there is a dark side to it. And we've even got, you know, big designer brand names that are linked to paedophilia. And they're, you know, models are walking with their brands, will be walking at, you know, at London Fashion Week. And, you know, people are still buying their clothes. I think we've really got to look at what is going on in the fashion world, be more informed and protect our models.
Lizzie, so you're not surprised by any of the files in the Epstein saga that relate to modelling and model industry, and the fact that young models were indeed shipped to Epstein's island to be used and abused by horrific men?
No, I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised, Dawn, one bit. I mean, even Epstein had money involved with a model agency called MC2 Models Management, which, I mean, he used model scouts to go and get girls. And sadly, That's still going on today, Dawn. I'm not shocked, I'm not surprised, but I'm really saddened. And we've got to wake up, that the model industry needs to wake up, and the model agents need to take responsibility. Stop thinking about the commission and the money they're making and think about their models. That's the thing, Dawn. And I'm really sad to say that, sadly, not all, but some model agents just think of the money and not the safety of their girls.
Yeah. Lizzie, thank you very much. Strong words there, indeed. That's broadcaster and columnist and former model Lizzie Cundy. Thank you very much for joining us. As you just heard Lizzie say that she was 14 when she joined the modelling agency. That's how young we're talking about these girls. Anyway, I'm Dawn Newsom, this is GB News. There's lots more coming up on today's show, including, to lighten the mood a little bit, shall we, let's talk about all the sport with Aidan McGee.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Well, the unsettled theme continues across Europe, with areas of low pressure moving through, bringing further spells of wet and windy weather. However, on Monday, something a little bit drier coming into the Canary Islands, but across Iberia, further spells of rain. Likewise across much of Italy, and then running into Greece, an area of low pressure, bringing further spells of rain or heavy showers and some strong winds. Canary Islands seeing the best of the sunshine, otherwise still remaining unsettled.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. I'm going to do now, they are throwing things up the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you so much for your company. I was going to say we're going to lighten the mood a little bit, but we're just talking about the Winter Olympics. Ada McGee is with me in the studio. A round of applause, everybody, please. And we were talking about the Winter Olympics, but we learned just now that this skier has been airlifted out.
Yeah, the American Lindsey Vonn. It's a comeback, actually. She's been out of the sport, so she's a skier. Been out of the sport for 6 years owing to an ACL injury. ACL standing, of course, for an anterior cruciate ligament injury. Very, very serious, irrespective of what sport you're involved in. Well, she was turning on the course and she crashed, unfortunately, and she's been airlifted out of the women's downhill final. So, you know, listen, she's 41 years old. It was a bit of a big ask for her to come back, but she has tried it at least, and it hasn't worked out well, and we'll await updates throughout the day.
Well, the fighting spirit of her, though, I mean, fair play to her. Yes. 41, I mean, up against women half
a 6-year break in any sport is a colossal amount of time to spend out of the discipline, and to come back and do it. Let's hope she's okay, but I don't think it'll be a while before we see her competing again.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope she recovers as best she can from that injury. Which
fraught with problems at the moment, the Winter Olympics.
Yes, they are.
Targeted sabotage. It's been claimed by the Italian Interior Ministry and the police and the Ministry of Transport. Now, what's happened is that some of the key routes, the rail routes on the railway network in Italy, have been targeted by protesters. We've seen examples of some electric cables being set alight, routes cut off, blockades involved as well. Now, I mean, this is interesting because this is exactly what happened a year and a half ago in Paris. I'm not sure if lessons have been learned, but it's quite a clever, devious way of actually doing this, because from the point of view of the protesters, because those areas in remote parts of the country, that's what railways are, they're not going to be manned by security, are they?
No, they're not. We're just looking at footage on your scenes now.
This is the protesters in Milan. They were peppered with tear gas. It's difficult to know on this why they're protesting, because nobody has actually claimed responsibility, but the feeling is that it's an environmental protest,
right?
As well as the fact that the cost of these infrastructure projects is running to tens of millions.
Well, suggest if you're worried about the environment, shooting a load of flares up in there is probably not the best thing you can do.
No, probably, but I think they just want priorities to be spent they just want money to be spent on their priorities at home. But it's interesting because I was doing some consultancy work 20 years ago for the Paris bid of the main Olympics, and they were talking about an off-the-peg Olympics, basically using venues and facilities that were already there, and the IOC at the time frowned on it, which is why London got it at the time, if you remember back over in Singapore at the vote when Tony Blair was there and David Beckham, etc. But it seems to be the trend now that you do an off-the-peg Olympics, use facilities already there and reduce your environmental impact, and that's what the organisers of the IOC are saying here, that this has been the case in Italy. They have actually revived a lot of our old facilities to get them in use today, but yeah, the train issue is very serious because it's causing delays, and it's not the sort of thing you can fix overnight. So there could be delays going into the main.
Have we won any medals yet? Let's do the fun stuff.
No, not yet. But tomorrow it looks like as if we could. I mean, the curling, the mixed doubles curling is the main thing for us. The Scottish duo who are involved in it have done really, really well. 7 matches in a row, or 7 games in a row. They've won. They don't know the identity.
It's really hard work as well.
It is. I mean, realistically, it could be our only medals. I mean, hopefully that's not the case, but it's something we're really good at. And we've been good at curling before, but it seems to be the Scots who do particularly well for us.
Brilliant. Ada McGee, thank you very much. And perfectly timed as well. I do like that when that happened. OK, well, don't go too far. There's loads more coming up in the rest of the show, including a story that you really, really don't want to miss. All of that after the weather. I'll see you soon.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. The weather is set to stay unsettled through much of the coming week. There's going to be further spells of rain and showers, and that does unfortunately mean there will be some flooding issues in parts of the UK. So low pressure dominates, further weather fronts pushing across the UK at times, and it will be fairly breezy as well. But back to this evening, and there's already a number of showers pushing eastwards and northwards across the UK. Some longer spells of rain at times overnight as well. But where skies do clear briefly, with the winds being quite light, I am expecting 1 or 2 isolated mist and fog patches to form by the morning. But with the cloud amounts fairly high in general, I am expecting it also to be largely frost-free, perhaps just a touch of frost in the very far north of Scotland later in the night. But for northeastern parts of Scotland, well, we've still got some very strong southeasterly winds, possibly even touching gale force for Orkney and Shetland. And here, more general outbreaks of rain through the night and begin the day on Monday morning as well. Further spells of rain across other parts of mainland Scotland, but something a little bit drier, I think, for parts of Northern Ireland, and certainly many parts of England and Wales in the central areas in the east will get off to a largely dry, albeit quite cloudy start with just the odd shower. And here the clouds should tend to break up a little bit more widely as we go through the course of Monday. So I'm hopeful that we'll be seeing some brightness or sunny spells by the afternoon for the Midlands, East Anglia in the south east. But look out towards the west. Here we have this another area of fairly heavy rain pushing in for the afternoon. So a rainfall warning coming into effect for parts of Wales and southwest England. Here the rain falling on saturated ground, so the potential for some flooding in places later in the day. Temperatures, though, will be above average for the time of year, so where it's not raining, it should feel relatively mild in any sunshine. The rain spreads its way eastwards across other parts of England through Monday night, and that sets the scene for a pretty unsettled week of weather to come, so a mixture of rain or showers, and temperatures will fall away, particularly in the north of the UK later in the...
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
You could win cash and the ultimate holiday in our two-part Great British Giveaway. Thanks to Riviera Travel, you could be jetting off on a £10,000 dream holiday for 2 people. With flights, transfers and luxury accommodation included, you'll get to choose the kind of holiday you want. Plus, we're going to give you £30,000 in tax-free cash.
For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 2 o'clock on Sunday the 8th of February and this is the weekend on GB News. Thank you so much for your company this afternoon. Packed final hour for you. Lord Mandelson has walked away with a taxpayer-funded payoff worth tens of thousands after being sacked as ambassador, with the Home Office now launching a review into how the payment was signed off. And it really isn't looking good for the Prime Minister, is it? Labour MPs are urging Keir Starmer to step aside for a caretaker leader until the summer, amid growing fears the party faces disaster at the ballot box if he stays. And fresh Epstein file revelations about dinners at the palace are intensifying pressure on Andrew as questions grow over why King Charles now feels he must keep his brother close and contained. And the Welsh Government has spent 1.2 million on a virtual reality anti-racist world, teaching students about white privilege, amongst many other really annoying things, it has to be said. Is this a waste of money or much-needed education? And Brits are increasingly saying "I do" later in life, with pensioners now more likely to marry than people in their 20s. What on earth is going on here? I'm Dawn Newsom, and this is The Weekend. So, happy Sunday lunchtime. I hope you're having a wonderful day out there. I just want to say thank you so much for your company. I really do enjoy your company at these weekends. And I love reading your message. I know you nag me. I know lots of you nag me and say, well, you say you send them in, but you don't read any out. That's because so many of you want to get in touch. And I love that fact. I really do. Lots of you wanting to get in touch, in particular about the grooming gang scandal and the violence and the abuse of women and girls in the Epstein files as well. And we will come back to that, I promise you, because it's one thing that I just get so angry about, and I know a lot of you do as well. And in particular men who care about women and girls and cannot get their heads around any man who would do this kind of thing. Let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today. In any case, gbnews.com/you'll say. We can have some fun as well, because it is a Sunday afternoon, I know, and hopefully you're nice and chilled at home with your feet up. If you are out and about, though, remember we are on the radio, and lots more new listeners are joining every single day, in particular the lunchtime weekends, and for Nana's show, which follows as well. So a big thank you from Nana and I in particular for the weekend afternoons. OK, in any case, enough waffling, Dawn. Let's get on with it. Let's get started after the headlines, though, with Katie Bowen.
Dawn, thank you and good afternoon. The headlines at 2:02. Lord Mandelson is facing calls to hand back the payoff he received after he was sacked as ambassador to the United States. The Foreign Office is reviewing the sum, which could be worth tens of thousands of pounds. The former Labour peer lost his role in September over his relationship with paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. The Prime Minister's allies have said he should give the taxpayer-funded handout back or donate it to a victims' charity. Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel has described the payoff as a disgusting betrayal of Epstein's victims and questions Sir Keir Starmer's judgment. It comes as the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, says he's warned Starmer against hiring Lord Mandelson. Lord Mandelson has not been arrested and he denies any wrongdoing. Work and Pension Secretary Pat McFadden has defended the Prime Minister.
I think the Prime Minister's acted in good faith throughout. I think Peter Mandelson has put him in a very bad position. When more information came to light last September, he very quickly fired Peter Mandelson. He's horrified by the revelations of the past week. He's apologised to the victims of this, and rightly so. So I think, you know, we will see more when all these vetting documents are published, as I hope they are very soon.
But Alex Burghardt says the Prime Minister should be embarrassed.
It's been Kemi's questioning in September that led to Mandelson being fired. It was her questioning on Wednesday that led to everyone finding out for the first time exactly what the Prime Minister had known about Mandelson's ongoing relationship with Epstein. It has been Conservative opposition that has pushed this every single step of the way and has led to the Prime Minister being more deeply embarrassed by a political scandal than anyone can really remember in living memory.
Elsewhere, hundreds of small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel today, taking advantage of an improvement in weather conditions. The first group of around 65 migrants were taken to the Kent port of Ramsgate just before 1 o'clock this afternoon. Ramsgate is being used as a temporary migrant arrivals port, while improvements are carried out to the Border Force Processing Centre in Dover. Bad weather in the Channel has significantly reduced the number of migrant crossings in recent weeks, resulting in the lowest number of arrivals at this point in the year since 2021. Today's arrivals take the number of migrants who have made the illegal crossing so far in 2026 to just under 1,200. Police in Italy have fired tear gas and water cannons at protesters near the Winter Olympics venue. It's after around 100 people wearing hoods and scarves threw firecrackers, smoke bombs and bottles at officers. It appears they broke away from the main demonstration, which saw around 10,000 take to the streets in Milan to protest against the environmental and economic impact of the Games. Similar disruption was caused half a mile from the Olympic Village, where 1,500 athletes are staying. An American news presenter whose mother went missing from her home 8 days ago has told the people who kidnapped her she will pay their ransom demands. Police believe Savannah Guthrie's 84-year-old mother, Nancy, was abducted from her home in Arizona, but they've not identified any suspects. Earlier this week, the FBI offered a $50,000 reward for information. According to reports, the kidnappers are demanding millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency.
We received your message and we understand. This is very valuable to us and we will pay.
And voters in Japan have been braving 28 inches of snow to cast their ballot in a snap election called just 2 weeks ago. Japan's first female Prime Minister is looking likely to have secured a clear mandate for the Liberal Democratic Party, which has ruled the country for most of the last 70 years. She's predicted to win between 302 and 366 of the 465 seats in the lower chamber. Financial scandal led to the party losing control of both chambers of Parliament last year. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Dawn.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you very much, Katie, and welcome back. I hope you're having a wonderful, relaxing Sunday afternoon out there. I'm going to try and keep the show as light as possible. I do appreciate it is a Sunday afternoon. But really, politics at the moment? Come on, it's enough to make a saint swear. I'm not allowed to swear on TV, but I really do want to sometimes. OK, the main story this hour. The Foreign Office is reviewing a payment made to Lord Mandelson after he was sacked as US ambassador back in September. Peter Mandelson is thought to have received a 5-figure lump sum, probably around about $55,000, no one's quite sure, that was equivalent of 3 months' pay, despite only being in the role for 7 months. Meanwhile, Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy has become the first cabinet minister to break ranks with Keir Starmer after his allies told journalists he warned the Prime Minister about Mandelson when the appointment was about to be made. This morning on GB News, Pat McFadden defended Keir Starmer's decision to appoint Mandelson as the US ambassador. Have a listen to what he said.
I think the Prime Minister's acted in good faith throughout. I think Peter Mandelson has put him in a very bad position. When more information came to light last September, he very quickly fired Peter Mandelson. He's horrified by the revelations of the past week. He's apologised to the victims of this, and rightly so. So I think, you know, we will see more when all these vetting documents are published, as I hope they are very soon.
Dear, good faith. We keep coming to that, don't we? Good faith, acting in good faith. OK. Joining me now is political commentator Paul Connew. Paul, good to see you. Thank you for joining me on a Sunday afternoon. Good faith. Was the Prime Minister acting in good faith? Now, this is going against TV programmes, piles of newspaper front pages, civil servants handing over dossiers, even MI16 warning that Mandelson is a bit iffy. I mean, is it still in good faith?
Well, if you remember, I wrote columns and said on this station before Mandelson was appointed ambassador, and immediately after he was, it was a ticking time bomb that would end in disaster. It was known. It was known via the Financial Times and Channel 4 News that he had maintained contact with Epstein after his conviction as a child abuse, prostituting paedophile. Now, and he'd stayed at Epstein's Manhattan mansion while he was in prison. That was known about. That alone should have disqualified him from being made the ambassador. And I'd heard, which I'd mentioned, that from Capitol Hill sources, there was a lot more damning stuff to come on both Mandelson and on Prince Andrew, or the then Prince Andrew, in the forthcoming Epstein files when they were going to be released. That was widespread gossip. If I knew that, I am sure MI6 would have known it. And there's a question here that I don't know whether it's true or not, but there is a rumor that MI6 were persuaded to tone down their initial assessment of the risks factor and do a still critical but softer version of it. Now, if that's true, it will be contained in the documents that go to the committee, the parliamentary committee investigating.
It does all beg a belief, it really does. And front page of the Telegraph today, now we have David Lammy coming out and saying, well, I warned Starmer about Mandelson. I mean, as Foreign Secretary...
Angela Rayner did too.
Yeah, but I mean, she's not in the cabinet at the moment. Mandelson, David Lammy is at least in the cabinet still. I mean, he's the first one to actually speak out and say, no, I told you all about this, I warned you. But the thing is, at the time...
Prime Minister at the time, she made the warning. She made the warning. So.
But David Lammy at the time was also doing media rounds saying, well, no, I mean, Mandelson's the right choice. He'll be good at the job.
It is extraordinary. There's something else puzzling me as well. When you analyse what Sir Keir has said about being lied to, it's difficult to assess whether he actually interrogated at length personally Mandelson, which you would say, as the former Director of Public Prosecution, he should have been skilled at, or whether it was delegated to the Cabinet Office, who then reported back. So I think the public and Parliament have a right to know, did the Prime Minister personally at length interrogate Mandelson before giving him that role?
As you say, as a barrister, it's his job to ask questions. I mean, you hope the right questions. But what do you make of the payment, Paul? I mean, I think at the very least, it's estimated to be around £55,000 as the taxpayer-funded payoff that Mandelson's received. I think he could make some amends. We can't make amends whatsoever, that's the wrong word, but he could actually go some way to sort of like making people a bit more OK with the situation if he donated that money to the grooming gang victims, for example.
Yes, or to some other victims fund. Yeah, if Mandelson had a shred of decency left, that's a very open question. He should volunteer it. If he doesn't, I think the government should find, or at least try to find, some legal mechanism to actually force him to do it. Apparently, but after tax, it's still worth about $40,000 that he would have received.
Indeed. Paul, just quickly and finally, we're talking about a caretaker Prime Minister at the moment. If Starmer does fall on his sword, who would be the best bet to hold the fort until a proper Prime Minister was found in replacement?
Well, in the past, when this has happened with Labour, of course, there's been an agreed handover, both when Harold Wilson went on ill health grounds and James Callaghan came in, ditto when Tony Blair stood down and Gordon Brown came over. This time, that won't happen for a number of reasons. But it would be an election required, because there's not going to be I can't see any agreement on a replacement. So I suppose David Lammy as Deputy Prime Minister would, if Starmer were to suddenly throw in the towel tomorrow and say, I've had enough, I'm stepping down, then the obvious thing would be David Lammy, while an election process would be put in place. But then you've got what happens then? You've got two elections coming up, with the by-election in Goring at the end of the end of this month. And you've got, of course, the May elections in Scotland, Wales, and parts of England. So I think any successor wouldn't welcome coming in until they have happened. But you've got problems there. You've got Angela Rayner, who Reform, for example, fear most as a campaigner, but she has got to sort out what her situation is with HMRC. over her property tax issues. You've got West Streeting, who may have been as the sort of the Blairite front runner, but it was so close to Mandelson. That could be a major handicap. Andy Burnham, of course, would have to find a place in Parliament. A dark horse could be Shabina Mahmood, but on the other hand, she's very close to Blue Labour, so I'm not quite sure whether the left wing of the party would welcome her. But she's a good campaigner, and I think Reform probably, and also she's quite a strong, tough Home Secretary, so I don't think that Reform would like her particularly. But again, could she hold together the two wings of the party? She is very much on the right of the party, so it's going to be very, very tricky. In fact, this morning, the headline that grabbed me in the Observer by their columnist Andrew Rawnsley, who is obviously a Labour man, but the headline was, "The Mandelson scandal has turned no drama star into a lurid soap opera," and I think that sums it up perfectly. And tomorrow is going to be a big day in Washington.
Of course.
Because the congressional questioning of Ghislaine Maxwell takes place, although I'm told she'll plead the Fifth Amendment against incriminating herself, and she's looking for a pardon from President Trump. But even President Trump daren't give her that because his own MAGA base are still convinced that somewhere in the 3 million still unreleased Epstein files, there's some embarrassing material, and there's a cover-up involved. So I think tomorrow could be dramatic in the sense that the Congress committee will be firing lots of questions about both American big figures and about Prince Andrew and about Mandelson.
Paul, can I just interrupt you? Paul, sorry, just need to interrupt you for some breaking news. We're just getting through that Morgan McSweeney has announced his resignation from government. Morgan McSweeney is
not before time.
He's indeed the right-hand man and the person that evidently pushed for Mandelson to get the job. Yes, OK. Now, we will bring you more on that breaking story as we have it. That's just literally broken this minute that Morgan McSweeney has resigned, which puts the Prime Minister in an even more difficult situation. OK, so joining me now to react to that news is Conservative MP and former chair of the Liaison Committee, Sir Bernard Jenkin. Sir Bernard, thank you very much. Good for joining at a perfect time in the breaking news that Morgan McSweeney has resigned. What's your reaction to that?
I mean, the government is on the skids, isn't it? He was the architect of Keir's becoming Prime Minister in the first place and has been the absolutely most crucial political figure in the government. I mean, we live in an age, sadly, where it's become the fashion for special advisors to be far more powerful than the vast majority of ministers. And he was obviously behind this decision and has decided to go. But you're right, it does leave the Prime Minister himself much more exposed, because at the moment the MPs were gunning for Morgan McSweeney as a sort of proxy. Well, who are they going to gun for now? I think one of the less reported but interesting developments this week was that Kemi challenged the Labour MPs to, if they're complaining about Keir Starmer, to talk to our whips about putting down a vote of no confidence in the House of Commons. Well, as soon as she said that, most of the Labour MPs went very quiet because they realised that's the territory they're in. But it's another nail in the coffin of the credibility of the government.
I mean, Bernard, how important has Morgan McSweeney been to not just this Labour government, but before, when they were in opposition? How important has he actually been?
Do you know, I'm not actually sure, but I think he was part of the architect of getting Keir Starmer elected. And, of course, this is the second Chief of Staff that has resigned. The previous one was the lady from the civil service who rather surprisingly went off to join the opposition.
Sue Smith, wasn't it, I believe?
Sue Gray, actually.
Sue Gray, sorry, yes.
Sorry, thanks. So, you know, to lose one Chief of Staff might be deemed unfortunate, as Oscar Wilde would have said, but to lose two seems more like carelessness.
I mean, it's been reported this week that Keir Starmer was very angry at Morgan McSweeney and blamed him for the mess that the government are in. But surely the buck has to stop with the boss. And you have to ask, if Morgan McSweeney had that much influence, that he was the one choosing Mandelson as ambassador, you have to question how much control Keir Starmer has over what's going on.
Well, Keir has not displayed the traits of a natural leader or a very decisive figure. He obviously relies a lot on advice from other people. Nobody's against the Prime Minister taking advice, but it's not a substitute for the Prime Minister's own judgment. This was a judgment made by the Prime Minister, and I think everybody understands that, and it is possibly fatally damaged his reputation as Prime Minister, and whether he will recover from it, I think everybody's getting a little bit ahead of themselves. It might take much longer, because these things always do. But one senses the British people are saying, well, you know, Keir Starmer can't carry on as Prime Minister, but then you're left with the question, well, who would take over? And I'm afraid that's not a very attractive prospect for most voters either.
OK, and so you've been in politics for a very long time, if you don't mind me saying so, Bernard. I mean, are you surprised? I mean, I don't remember it being quite as much of a scandal and as sleazy as it is now. Are you surprised at what we've learned over the past week?
Well, I'm not surprised, because if you remember, many of us, Kemi included, raised the question publicly whether this was an appropriate appointment. It's very interesting that David Lammy now says, oh, I warned the Prime Minister about this. Well, then, if he thought that, he can't have thought it very forcefully to himself, otherwise he'd have resigned and spoken out against it. So I'm afraid they're all in it. They all went along with it, and everybody's trying to wash their hands of it, and including the Prime Minister, but somehow he thinks, oh, well, I didn't know this and I didn't know that, therefore it was all right at the time. It was all public knowledge. It had been reported in the papers that Mandelson still had this ongoing friendship with Epstein, and it should have been, you know, this talk about fiddling the vetting material. That is going to be the most interesting question, and also a question raised by Gordon Brown, which I think is a very good one. When an appointment, such a high-profile appointment, to what is usually a professional civil servant or diplomat's job, but a politician is appointed, well, then surely it should go through to the relevant committee, and there should be a pre-appointment hearing, and then this would have all come out then. And bless her, the chair of the Labour chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee did want to have a pre-appointment hearing, and it was refused by the government. And I think that's something that all the Select Committee chairs, as a former chair of the Liaison Committee, which is all the Select Committee chairs, we'll all want to look at, because it shouldn't be for the government to avoid scrutiny when they're making highly political appointments of this nature.
Well, indeed, and we do know, obviously, that as well as the criminal investigation, there is the internal investigation going on. But, I mean, what we want now is answers, and we were told that this is going to probably take much longer than any of us want, because you can't just sweep this under the carpet. At the moment, Bernard, we seem to have a zombie government. I mean, you know, Morgan McSweeney resigning today. Who's running the country?
That's up to Labour MPs. If they want to carry on with a zombie government, they've got a majority in the House of Commons. There's nothing the rest of us can do about it. What I would advise Labour MPs to do is to make sure that if they want a change of leadership, get on with it now. If they think that Keir Starmer is going to be the right Prime Minister to lead them into the next general election, well, then they better nail their colours to the mast. But they can't just carry on waiting and seeing if they want to get rid of a zombie government.
OK, Bernard, we just actually, part of the breaking news of Morgan McSweeney resigning, remember, the advisor to the Prime Minister resigning today. I just want to read some of what he said in his resignation letter.
Yes, I haven't seen it.
Yes, you have seen it.
No, I haven't.
Right, OK. He says, this is Morgan McSweeney sort of talking, the decision to appoint Peter Mandelson was wrong. He has damaged our party, our country and our trust in politics. Goes on to say, when asked, I advised the Prime Minister to make that appointment and I take full responsibility for that advice. In public life, responsibility must be owned when it matters most, not just when it is most convenient. In the circumstances, the only honourable course is to step aside. Can I have your reaction to that?
Well, what's most interesting about that, he says the decision to appoint Peter Mandelson was wrong, and he's taking responsibility for it. He's not saying, on the basis of what I knew at the time, it was fine. So the Prime Minister has yet to admit that he was wrong to make that appointment, regardless what has been discovered subsequently. The Prime Minister has not apologised for making that appointment on the basis of his knowledge at the time. And I suggest the Prime Minister really should just do that. He would have more credibility if he did that, instead of trying to avoid the responsibility. Morgan McSweeney has not avoided his responsibility, and I'm afraid his parting letter puts the spotlight right on the Prime Minister. If he says it was wrong at the time, it was wrong at the time, and it wasn't about what was subsequently discovered.
Yes, he goes on to say, I remain fully supportive of the Prime Minister. He is working every day to rebuild trust, restore standards and serve the country. I will continue to back that mission in whatever way I can. It has been my honour to serve. Working every day to rebuild trust and restore standards and serve the country. Do you think this government has any hope of rebuilding trust with the public?
Well, there's got to be some pretty dramatic gestures if Keir is to rebuild any trust in his premiership. I would say that this is the long accumulation behind this of all the other failures and U-turns. This would not be so toxic for any Prime Minister, but for the fact that there was so much going wrong with the government, and the government was already so incredibly unpopular, despite having won an enormous majority. I mean, an enormous majority. They had a huge mandate to do what they said they were going to do, and they've just failed to deliver. And that's the real issue. And then the state of the economy, the state of our defences, it's all very, very serious. And it's the wrong time to have a zombie government, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Bernard, this is, 15 U-turns in 18 months. I don't recall any government of whatever persuasion actually achieving that not enviable record.
Well, as Tony Blair has said, at least behind the scenes, this government really did get elected with a lot of slogans and not much of a plan. And it's very difficult for a government to renew itself when it's in power. So I think we're seeing perhaps the next general election date coming forward, perhaps. We're certainly going to see an absolute wipeout of Labour in the local elections, and we keep hearing that Reform are going to do very well in those elections. I would just beg voters to bear in mind that Reform hasn't got a record of running very good councils, and they put up the council taxes even more than Labour in some cases, but certainly more than the Tories. If they don't want their local government to fall to pieces, and you want to vote against the Labour Party at the forthcoming local elections, you better vote Conservative.
When do you think, you said that the election could be brought forward, when do you think the soonest they would do that? Is that something they should do?
Well, if Keir Starmer called the general election while he's in office, the Sovereign might well say, it's the one thing the Sovereign has control over, by the way, is whether to dissolve Parliament or not. I imagine the Sovereign would say, well, is there nobody else that can form an administration? And there would be a leadership election in the Labour Party, and there would be a new Prime Minister. But if that doesn't work, if it's still a zombie government, because the Labour Party is so divided on so many issues, as we've seen, which is what's the cause of the U-turn, then there comes a point where the Parliament has run out of steam, and we don't have a fixed-term Parliament anymore. And if the government then actually lost a vote of confidence or voted for a general election, if Parliament itself voted to have a general election, the Sovereign would dissolve Parliament, even though it's quite soon afterwards, after the last one.
And who do you think, I mean, it says something about the state of politics in this country, no disrespect, at the moment, that the favourite, according to the bookies, is Angela Rayner, a woman obviously with the cloud of her tax issue hanging over her still.
Well, that should rule her out, shouldn't it? I mean, it's just so obvious, and it is the state of politics, well, state of politics in the Labour Party. I think you will see in the Conservative Party that Kemi Badenoch is showing a much more principled approach to politics. She said on the departure of some recent defectors to the Reform Party, she said, well, we are a party where we must trust each other and we must tell each other the truth. Those are our values. I don't see much of that in the Labour Party.
And Sir Bernard, we ask this all the time, but if there is a general election, would the Conservative Party consider teaming up with Reform just to defeat this Labour government?
I think you will see the Conservative Party and Reform slogging it out.
Even if that risks Labour getting back in?
But what happens in individual constituencies will be very interesting, because the public have got wise to tactical voting, and they can make up their own minds about what they want. At the last election, it was very much get the Tories out, understandably, let's say that. But at the next election, they'll be thinking, well, we don't want the Labour Party back again. How do we get rid of Labour? And which parties they vote for under those circumstances in each different... constituencies are so different. There are different challenges in each constituency. That would be for the voters to decide, not necessarily for the parties to try and stitch it up.
It is, I mean... Bernard, just before we lose you, thank you so much. I know you weren't expecting to talk about this particular issue so much. What do you think the scenes are going to be like in 10 Downing Street now? This news has just been broken. Morgan McSweeney has gone. He said it was the wrong decision. He's fallen on his sword. What is Keir Starmer going to be doing this afternoon?
Well, I expect he's making a lot of calls. The weekend is a period where he can catch up on his papers and make a lot of calls. But on Monday morning, he'll be given the regular security briefing that the Prime Minister gets every day. He will have to get on with the day job and keep delivering. And the problem of a political crisis like this, so many people stop doing the day job, and that's what's dangerous for the country.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're worried about. Sir Bernard Jenkins, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you. We took more of your time than we intended. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Interesting opinions there. OK, well, let's get the full latest on this breaking story. Political editor Christopher Hope is with us now. Christopher, well, oh, my God, Morgan McSweeney has gone. What do we make of all this?
Well, this is extraordinary. I mean, I know that he was not planning to go when I was in touch with him on Friday, and for him to go now is extraordinary. Last Wednesday, the Prime Minister said that he had full confidence in Morgan McSweeney. He said then that the man on screen now, Morgan McSweeney, was a central part of the Keir Starmer operation. That if he's not central now, what has changed in the past 48 hours? If it was a crisis on Friday, it's a full-blown DEFCON 5 crisis now for this government. To lose Morgan McSweeney, the man who, frankly, is the political beating heart of Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer lacks the basic political nous, I think, sometimes navigate these situations. He knows the voters, he knows the groups who he needs to get to in order to win the next election. To lose Morgan McSweeney is a disaster for the Prime Minister. Frankly, he was the fire guard, stopping people going after his job. With Morgan McSweeney gone, he is now in real jeopardy.
This is the thing. I mean, do you think this would have come as you say, lots of political commentators have been caught out this afternoon by the speed with which this has happened. Do you think Keir Starmer has been surprised by this announcement today?
I think he has been, and I certainly am, given what I was hearing on Friday from sources close to him and others. I didn't think it would be so quickly. I thought it was just almost noises off, but clearly he takes personal responsibility for what happened there with Peter Mandelson. The hope now is by throwing, well, he's hoping, I'm sure, that by leaving in this way, that means that the issue has gone away, that we can move on now and listen to what the PM has to say about the issues he cares about, which is cost of living crisis. But I fear that won't be the case. I think it's now going to be open season. The next question is this enough to stop the bleeding? Is it enough to staunch the flow of political capital away from number 10? What happens next? Will any cabinet ministers make a move on the PM? And that could happen as soon as tomorrow. It's extraordinary time now, I think, of crisis I didn't see coming this quickly. And certainly, obviously, huge regret over the appointment of Peter Mandelson. I mean, the fury that I saw from the Prime Minister on Thursday in Hastings at that speech, he spat the word Mandelson out with venom, and so different to the Peter he warmly welcomed as ambassador just a year ago when I was with him in the residence in Washington with the PM's party then. So it just is a surprise. I didn't think it'd be, I think he's so important to the PM. I think he would have done all he could to keep him, but it clearly wasn't enough. And now without Morgan McSweeney, frankly, Sir Keir Starmer is adrift, I think, in a rudderless number 10.
And the knives are going to be out even more for him.
I expect so, I think, because he was the fireguard. As long as Morgan McSweeney was there, the PM wasn't going to stand down. I mean, I just don't... These PMs, and I've been around, Dawn, not as long as you have, but 30 years, 20 years, covering, I'm only joking, but covering politics for a long time now. And these guys are writing the first line of their obituaries every single day. He'll always be known as the former Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. They never want to end that sooner than they have to. They cling on as long as they can. We saw it, didn't we, with Theresa May and with Boris Johnson, when frankly the herd has shifted and it was time they went. I just don't think we're there yet with Sir Keir Starmer. I can't see the candidate to replace him. I can't see why Angela Rayner can do it 5 months after being told by Laurie Magnus, who's the ethics czar, that she broke the ministerial code, fell short of the code. How can she possibly be Prime Minister, having been kicked out of that role as Housing Secretary and Deputy PM 5 months ago? I can't see how that happens. Wes Streeting, I can't see how he's acceptable to people because of his links to Peter Mandelson. So if you take out Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner, who's left? Could it be a caretaker like Pat McFadden? Could it be John Healey? I can't see them as leaders. So I think what's holding the PM in office at the moment, frankly, is a lack of anyone who can replace him.
Which Christopher, is absolutely terrifying, because he is going to be, let's be honest, he's going to be running around like a headless chicken now. I mean, he's got no one. Morgan McSweeney has gone. Who has he got left to rely on? Who can he trust?
Yes, and in fact, can he be trusted? I'm not sure even the PM can be trusted after appointing Peter Mandelson, given what was known in the public domain, let alone what may have been told to him privately about the links between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson. I mean, it is, yes, extraordinary. I think the loss of Morgan McSweeney is a complete, devastating blow to the Prime Minister, one which I'm not sure he can survive. And I wasn't going to be saying that as recently as Friday. But I think with him gone, he's the fireguard, keeping off any pressure on his job. That's gone now. Who's left? I mean, he's lost so many key figures close to him in Downing Street. I think Morgan McSweeney was the one who could navigate him through choppy political waters. Of course, there's by-elections coming up, local elections in May, elections in Scotland and Wales, which will also, we think, will trigger some form of a leadership crisis, given where the polls are for Labour. It's a complete disaster losing Morgan McSweeney. Language today from David Blunkett saying he had to go, and other senior Labour figures saying he had to go. That's probably where it got to. They couldn't withstand the pressure anymore. And these advisors, Morgan McSweeney, Alistair Campbell back in the day, as soon as they're talked about a lot, they have to move on, because really the principals are the MPs, the elected politicians, not the advisors. Once they're being talked about in these terms, they've got to go.
They become the story. Christopher Hope, thank you so much for joining us. That's political editor of GB News, Christopher Hope there. OK, now let's talk to former Director of Strategic Communications at Downing Street, James Lyons. And if you are just joining, you join us as breaking news this afternoon. Morgan McSweeney has resigned as Sir Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff in the wake of that Mandelson scandal. It's the Prime Minister's right-hand man quit after a backlash for him, pushing for Lord Mandelson to be appointed ambassador to the US. It was McSweeney who insisted Mandelson was the best man for the job in Washington, despite being warned several times by civil servants and indeed MI6. OK, now let's talk to James Lyons for his take on the situation. James, as a former director of communications, what would your advice be to how to communicate the mess that is now happening this afternoon?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that I think this is a very sad news for Morgan personally, obviously. Whatever's gone on around the Mandelson appointment, this is a guy who saved the Labour Party, effectively. And you know, has huge skills, as well as being a very charismatic character.
When you say save the Labour Party, it could also ended up being the one that destroyed the Labour Party. It was his decision to appoint Peter Mandelson, which he now admits is wrong.
Well, look, as a fully paid-up member of the Guild of Advisors, I would point out that actually advisors give advice; they don't make the decisions. But look, there's no kind of overstating how important Morgan has been in Keir Starmer's government. It was sometimes difficult to work out whether, you know, Morgan was central to the Keir Starmer project or Keir Starmer was central to the Morgan McSweeney project. And, you know, it is, I think, Chris Hope is probably right that his departure now makes the Prime Minister's chances of getting through all of this, you know, it makes it harder for the Prime Minister to get through all of this in the longer term.
So do you think, I mean, Morgan McSweeney was the safeguard, or the fireguard, as Christopher Hope just used, for the Prime Minister. Do you now think the Prime Minister, well, how long will he last?
Well, look, one of the many roles that Morgan played in government was being a lightning conductor for criticism from various different parts of the Labour Party and, of course, from the media. So that has now gone, and that obviously is going to make the Prime Minister's position more exposed.
And what message is Morgan McSweeney's resignation sending out to those who, as we know, are circling the Prime Minister? Angela Rayner, our Wes Streeting.
Well, I mean, what is interesting and surprising is that, you know, if I was still in Downing Street now, I would have actually been somewhat relieved by the weekend's papers. There didn't feel like there were any kind of substantial new lines of inquiry that were thrown up by the Sundays, which is often what happens. And in fact, you have Pat McFadden out defending Morgan just a matter of hours ago on the kind of Sunday morning broadcast round. Look, I've been saying for some time that I couldn't see how Morgan's departure would improve the Prime Minister's situation. But I guess it's also true that him remaining could have made it worse. And, you know, we are going to get this extraordinary avalanche of documents and messages at some point in the near future. And that could throw up all sorts of new revelations or details, which could be very, very difficult for all sorts of people in government.
Morgan McSweeney has said, I was wrong, and that's why he's going. Do you think we can expect a letter like that from our Prime Minister soon?
Well, look, the Prime Minister said last week that he regrets making the appointment. He regrets taking the decision, you know, after he says he was lied to by Peter Mandelson. I think, you know, when the documents come out and we see, you know, when this Pandora's box is opened, the Prime Minister is going to have some pretty strong things to say, whether that's about generally kind of cleaning up politics. But, you know, I wonder if he might also end up having to go a little bit further and just saying, well, look, on the basis of what was known at the time, I was wrong to make the appointment, but we'll have to wait and see. I mean, what is certainly true is a lot of the Prime Minister's critics are being rather wise after the fact, because as I understand it, everything that's presented to the Prime Minister is already in the public domain. And obviously, Peter Mandelson's appointment was wildly heralded as a kind of genius political move by many people who follow these things.
Certainly by David Lammy, front page of the Telegraph today. Lammy, I warned Starmer about Mandelson. Well, as Foreign Secretary at the time, you would have approved that appointment, and at the time, David Lammy was one of those people doing the media round saying it was a great appointment and Mandelson was the right person for the role.
Yeah, well, you know, what people say in private, it doesn't always directly translate to what they say in public, does it?
Well, this is true. I mean, we keep talking about the trust issue here, and as you said, we had Pat McFadden on GB News earlier defending the Prime Minister, saying he has every trust in him. Do you have trust and faith in our Prime Minister at the moment, James?
Well, look, I think he's a good man, a man of integrity, who is trying to do the right thing in what is undoubtedly the toughest job in
James, it was a job he wanted. He's been angling for this job for a very long time.
Not as long as some, actually, I would gently point out. He came to politics very late in life and doesn't have very much time for the kind of...
but that's enough of the deflection. Enough of the deflection. Yes, he has wanted this job for a long time, let's be honest here.
Well, I mean, as I say, he's not a lifelong politician, unlike you know, most of the people who reach that office.
No, indeed, he was a barrister, as we know, in a former life. He has mentioned it several times, and the job of a barrister is to ask pointed questions of people that he is certainly interviewing in any way, shape or form. Did he ask any questions at all of Peter Mandelson? Did he just rely on other people?
Well, I think, I mean, I wasn't privy to the discussions that were going on around this at the time, but as I understand it, it was Morgan who was asking the questions on his behalf.
Right, OK. So, therefore...
I think that's already in the public domain.
Yes, no, it is, absolutely. And talking to the public domain, everything about Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was in the public domain as well, even down to the fact that MI6 warned about Mandelson and some of his connections 15 years ago. Surely the Prime Minister, and Keir Starmer, just before he was Prime Minister, as he was, would have taken notice of MI6.
Well, I don't think MI6 would have briefed the Prime Minister that long ago. He would have been Director of Public Prosecutions at the time, so I don't.
No, but I mean, the information was out there by the security services. Did he not take any notice of it at all when he became Prime Minister?
I mean, look, as I say, you know, the information was out in the public domain. Peter Mandelson was still a public figure. He was Chancellor of one university and he was in the running to be Chancellor at Oxford. He was the star of a podcast that was a firm favourite in Westminster at the time. So, you know, the context around this is that at the time, Peter Mandelson was a public figure. And, of course, we all know that Peter Mandelson had to resign from Cabinet twice. I mean, I am old enough to have followed him around the TV studios the first time he had to do it. But when I was a political journalist. But actually, you know, since then he'd gone on to be a European Commissioner and he'd been brought back, obviously, into the UK government by Gordon Brown. And nobody obviously knew anything about what he was getting up to while he was the de facto Deputy Prime Minister. All of that information has come out over the last week.
I would beg to differ, and we could go over the ground about the newspaper elevations, the documentaries, and the fact that dossiers were handed over to the government at the time. James, just quickly and finally, how long do you think Keir Starmer can carry on now? Is he a dead man walking?
Look, as I say, there is a way through this for the Prime Minister. Undoubtedly there is, but I do think that has become more difficult this afternoon.
And who do you think, if you were a betting man, I'm not sure if you are or not, but who would you like to see if Keir Starmer does go, and that potentially could happen after Morgan McSweeney has fallen on his sword? Who would you personally think would do the best job?
I love a flutter, but I tend to stick to the horses because my political bets in the past have not enriched me. Let's say that.
OK, well, Angela Rayner is the bookie's favourite at the moment, which is interesting, to say the least. OK. Right, thank you very much, James. That's former Director of Strategic Communications at Downing Street, James Lyons there. Now, we have Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has responded to this breaking news that Morgan McSweeney has resigned this afternoon. Kemi has said it's about time, but once again, with this PM, it's somebody else's fault. Mandelson lied to me, or Morgan advised me. Keir Starmer has to take responsibility for his own terrible decisions, but he never does. That's what Kemi Badenoch has had to say about the resignation of Keir Starmer's right-hand man, Morgan McSweeney, this afternoon. So let's talk to our chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, reaction, please.
Yes, well, I think, to be honest, it was inevitable that Morgan McSweeney was going to have to go, because we've had day after day after day of drama, catastrophic headlines, the revelations from those Epstein files getting worse and worse and worse by the day, and the pressure on the Prime Minister getting greater and greater. And look, Morgan McSweeney was a huge figure behind the scenes. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that if it wasn't for Morgan McSweeney, Sir Keir Starmer would never have become Prime Minister, because it was Morgan McSweeney working behind the scenes for years to get Labour back away from the Corbynites, back towards the centre. He selected Sir Keir Starmer. He had the project. He was the brains behind it. He handpicked Sir Keir Starmer as the man to front all this. He was the power behind the throne to some extent. But equally, this catastrophe, and let's face it, there's been many, many missteps since Labour came to power back in July 2024. This one is clearly the most serious, and this has got Morgan McSweeney's hands all over it, because before he won the battle for Chief of Staff with Sue Gray would have been quite happy for Dame Karen Pierce, who was the US ambassador, to continue in that role. She was booted out of Number 10. She lost that power struggle. Morgan McSweeney came in. Donald Trump was elected. They knew that Donald Trump was going to be difficult to deal with, very changeable. And Morgan McSweeney pushed very hard for Peter Mandelson to get the job. Peter Mandelson has been a mentor to McSweeney. Behind the scenes, they've been in a lot of contact. And of course, at the end of the day, it was a risk that they took. The Prime Minister doesn't want to say this, but Peter Carr, the Business Secretary, has previously said they knew that it was not without risks, but that they thought he was the best person for the job, because they knew that Lord Mandelson had been sacked twice before. They knew that he was known as the Lord of Darkness. And in fact, Aisha Hazarika, who's now in the House of Lords as a Labour peer, has said today that that's exactly why they put him in the job, because they wanted somebody who lived in those circles, who could schmooze. And I think we've heard it several times. I've heard it from many Labour women, that there is a boys' club in Number 10. We see it again and again and again, and nothing would do them, but they put a man with a questionable past, but a huge Labour figure, into that job. They knew there were risks. They ignored those risks, and it has come back to bite them big time.
It really has. Obviously, the big question now, Catherine, is can Keir Starmer survive?
Well, I think this has certainly bought him some time. Clearly, someone was going to have to go. McSweeney has owned up to being ultimately behind this. But look, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the guy at the top. The guy at the top is the Prime Minister. So advisors decide, advisors advise, leaders decide. So ultimately, the Prime Minister also knew that Mandelson had been sacked twice before, and also knew he was called the Prince of Darkness. I think this buys the Prime Minister time. I think ultimately, though, the Prime Minister's position is incredibly precarious. I'd be amazed if there's a move to get rid of him before the by-election coming up in a couple of weeks. I'd be surprised if they move against him actually before the local elections in May. But I think then that he really may be in trouble. I think the thing that is going to keep him in post for weeks or months or possibly longer is simply the fact that they don't have an obvious replacement. Wes Streeting, is very closely tied with Lord Mandelson. He was a mentor to him as well. Angela Rayner, she's still got those tax investigations going on. You know, the public understands she didn't pay tax that she owed. This stuff's quite easy to understand. And Andy Burnham, well, he doesn't have a seat. Catherine, got a frog in my throat.
Catherine, I'm just going to interrupt you there as well. We have just heard from Keir Starmer, who has issued a statement about the resignation of Morgan McSweeney. Keir Starmer says he owes Morgan McSweeney a debt of gratitude and thanked his outgoing Chief of Staff. The Prime Minister said it's been an honour working with Morgan McSweeney for many years, who turned our party round after one of its worst ever defeats and played a central role running our election campaign. It is largely thanks to his dedication, loyalty and leadership that we won a landslide majority and have the chance to change the country. Having worked closely with Morgan in opposition and in government, I have seen every day his commitment to the Labour Party and our country. Our party and I owe him a debt of gratitude, and I thank him for his service. Catherine, any quick reaction to that statement?
Yes, well, he certainly does owe Morgan McSweeney, because, as I said before, he wouldn't have been Prime Minister if it wasn't for this man. I think everything that as the Prime Minister has said is absolutely true, but it is also true that this rests, yes, ultimately on the Prime Minister, but Morgan McSweeney was the one that was absolutely pushing and insistent that Peter Mandelson was the only person for this job. So I think there was no other result other than Morgan McSweeney had to go, although apparently only 2 or 3 days ago he was of the view that this would all blow over. But I think day by day, and as more revelations have come out, it has been absolutely clear that this is not just something in passing. We're probably still only at the beginning of this absolutely enormous scandal.
OK, Catherine, crystal ball at the ready, been in politics a long time, you're very experienced. What's going to happen tomorrow, Monday? Will Keir Starmer last the day?
Very difficult to make predictions. Who would have thought that Boris Johnson got that majority of 80, would be taken out by his own MPs? Who would have thought that Keir Starmer would have a majority of 160? And we're all talking about when he's going to go. I would be amazed if anybody made a move on him before the local elections. I think even then, the people that would like his job have all got various issues. So it may be that he stays on even beyond then. But I do think he will not lead them into the next election. And in fact, I asked last summer at the NATO conference in The Hague, shortly around the time of the welfare budget, that debacle, it was all falling apart. And I said to him then, how confident are you of leading Labour into the next election? Because it seemed then that his authority was beginning to fade. And we've seen so many U-turns after that. MPs are absolutely furious. They see themselves losing their job. So I think he's going to be having a very, very difficult time going forward. Not that he hasn't had a very difficult time, really, for many months.
Yeah, Catherine, breaking news coming in by the second at the moment. Interestingly, allies of McSweeney are already denying he was responsible for appointing Lord Mandelson, when allies told Bloomberg that it was an incalculable loss to the government and he was devastated. Those who knew how much he has done for Labour. So they are defending McSweeney. I haven't seen anyone yet coming out defending our Keir Starmer in this. Meanwhile, the soft left pressure group set up by allies of Andy Burnham, the mayor of Manchester, he has, they have come out and issued a statement welcoming the departure of Morgan McSweeney. Mainstream, that's the name of this group, was set up last autumn with the backing of the Greater Manchester Mayor amid growing anger over the direction of the government under Keir Starmer. This statement by Mainstream's interim council says all those involved in the disastrous appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the US must be held to account. And it is right that personnel in number 10, most supportive of Mandelson, face consequences. We now need to tear out the regressive politics of elite privilege and toxic factionalism that enabled this scandal and which will only produce more root and branch. That certainly sounds like fighting talk from Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, who, as we know, can't challenge at the moment. He doesn't have a seat and was denied the right to stand in the by-election that's coming up in Manchester. If you are just joining us, Morgan McSweeney has resigned as Sir Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff in the wake of that Mandelson scandal. The Right, OK, we've got a quick statement here, have we? Let's remind you of Morgan McSweeney's statement, shall we? After careful reflection, I have decided to resign from government. The decision to appoint Peter Mandelson was wrong. He has damaged our party, our country and trust in politics itself. When asked, I advised the Prime Minister to... When asked, I advised, sorry, it's just got a bit broken up here. When asked, I advised the Prime Minister, it is our... So that is why I'm fining on. That's why I'm resigning now. Basically, he's taken full responsibility. Sorry, we've got a bit of a garbled message on the auto cue there. Catherine, final quick reaction on the seismic events here. Morgan McSweeney has gone. This leaves Keir Starmer without anyone, any guard dog, if you like. There are people on manoeuvres for his job. Very strong statement from Andy Burnham supporters there. Quick reaction from you.
Yes, a huge moment. Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, is falling on his sword for the appointment of Lord Mandelson, the Prince of Darkness, the man that Morgan McSweeney and the Prime Minister decided was the best person for that absolutely plum job of US ambassador. A lot of this, let's face it, has to do with Donald Trump, because when Donald Trump was elected, they knew that he could be difficult, that he could be changeable. They wanted somebody that they felt would be able to handle Trump very well. And for a while, it went pretty well. They got the US-UK trade deal, or tariff mitigation deal, if you could call it a trade deal, and so on. But it has all fallen apart, first of all, with the first lot of the Epstein files being released last September, when Lord Mandelson was sacked very unceremoniously from that job. But then the second tranche that were published, I think, just over a week ago, every day the revelations more shocking and more damning. The news that he seems to have passed market-sensitive information at the height of the financial crisis, when he was business secretary, over to Jeffrey Epstein, a financier, a billionaire, a very rich man. And of course, this is why there is now this police investigation going on. But in terms of our domestic politics, the fallout absolutely enormous. The hope will be that by Morgan McSweeney going now, that will relieve the pressure, that everybody will take a breath. And I think in some ways it will buy the Prime Minister